Hello. In this short video I'm going to go through a solution to the Norwegian problem. The solution I'm going to show you is just one way of solving this problem. That's not to say that it's the only way. One thing to mention though is that quite often in these Olympiads you're asked to provide an explanation of your solution, and I'd just like to stress that what that means is an explanation of what you found and not how you found it. So it doesn't matter if you don't exactly follow this method, but hopefully this will show you what's going on. Now, the first thing to do and to stress is that you should read the title and the blurb very carefully, because quite often there's some clues in there. And that's the case here. The title is The Norwegian Problem, A Norwegian Problem, Norwegian Problems, The Norwegian Problems. And that gives you a hint that the question is something about definite and indefinite articles, that's the and a, and singular and plural. And the problem is also about different noun classes. Now, the first task in the problem is to match up some sentences with their English translations, and this is what we call a chaos and order problem. It's very typical. But it's not a bad idea, before you even start trying to do that, to look through the whole problem, because quite often in later parts of the problem there might be some hints or clues that help you along the way. So, for example, a bit later in the problem we're told that these nouns belong to different noun classes or genders: common, feminine and neuter. So that's probably going to be a feature that we have to look out for, because that determines how the noun can be used with words such as the and a. And then a bit later in the problem you're given some further nouns which you have to translate. So presumably what you have to do is apply the knowledge that you've can extract from matching the sentences in the first part to the later tasks. And in the third part of the problem you have to do a translation from Norwegian into English. Okay, so how do we get started? Very often with these chaos and order problems, a good way to get started is to look for repeated words and phrases and count them and compare them that way. So a quick count of both the Norwegian and the English side here tells us, for example, that woman or women occurs 4 times, apple 3 times, bus or buses 2 times, and so on. And on the Norwegian side we have bussen or busser twice, bil in its various forms 4 times, eple 3 times, and so on. So that immediately gives you a clue. There's only 2 occurrences of the word bus, and there's only 2 occurrences of the word buss in Norwegian, if that's how you pronounce it. So that immediately tells you that those 2 probably match up. Now, Norwegian and English being related languages, perhaps you could have guessed that, but it's better to do it methodically to be sure that you've got the right answer. So we can say that bus is bus, and that's highlighted in blue here. And you'll remember that apple occurs 3 times, so we can probably agree that eple is apple, and again there's a similarity because they're cognates. But that leaves us with 2 words which each occur 4 times, kvine and bil, one of which is woman and one of which is car. Now, if you look closely at the examples, you'll see that kvine only occurs in the subject position. That's the first word of the sentence. And it's woman, or a woman, the woman, likewise in the English, only occurs in the subject position. Whereas bil occurs sometimes as subject, sometimes as object. So now we know, or we can say fairly safely, that kvine means woman. You might be interested to know it's cognate with the English word queen. And bil means car. It's actually short for automobil. But you don't need to know that to solve the problem. And while we're at it, we can also notice that jeg har means I have. Actually, har in general means have. And stanser her means stops here. Again, just by counting the examples. So that's only a part of the problem. We still have to match up the exact couples, and some pairs are very similar. For example, we have these two sentences with apple. I have the apple, I have an apple, which are different in Norwegian, but we don't know which is which. We have eplet and et apple, but we don't know which is the apple and which is an apple. But we do know that en kvinne har eplet is a woman has the apple. So that tells us that eplet is apple and et apple is an apple. We have a similar problem with biler and biline. Again, we have these two sentences which are very similar, differ only in whether the plural is a bare plural, as we call it, or a definite plural. So which is which, biler or biline? And this time there isn't a third sentence with biler or biline in it. So we don't have any other ways of knowing which is which. However, we'll notice that busser has a similar ending to biler, and kvinnene has a similar ending to biline. So the best we can guess is that similar endings have similar meanings. So the ER ending is the bare plural, and the NE ending or ENE ending is the definite plural. Okay, so now we've matched up all the sentences like that, and it's of course very useful now to rearrange the right hand side so that the sentences are paired up with their translations. So we've already started the problem of making sure that we know, as well as which sentences translate each other, what the different forms of the Norwegian words correspond to. We've got, as I mentioned before, definite and indefinite singular. That's the, and actually the is definite, a is indefinite, and a bare plural and a definite plural. So we have to figure out which forms are which. And you can see how to do this pretty easily. Kvinna is the woman, so that must be definite singular. Kvinnene is the women, definite plural. In kvinna is indefinite singular, a woman. And you can do the same for all the other words as well. So now we can fill the Norwegian forms in a table, and we've got the 4 words that we're interested in on the as rows, and the 4 forms, indefinite singular, definite singular, bare plural, definite plural, as 4 columns. And you can already see, I hope, a few patterns emerging. For example, the indefinite singular is marked with a little word, say, as it is in English, but the definite plural, the definite singular and plural, and the bare plural all seem to be marked just with suffixes, endings, which aren't always the same. Now, the next part of the problem reminds us that nouns in Norwegian belong to one of the 3 classes or genders: common, feminine, common, and neuter. So we can add that to the table and start to try and express the generalizations that we can see from the table as rules. So, for example, to form the definite singular of a feminine noun, it seems that you change the final E to an A. To form the definite singular of a neuter noun, you add a T, and so on. So those rules are going to be very useful for the next section, which is where we're given 3 new words: jente, which is feminine, hund, which is common, and hotel, which is neuter. And we have to translate 4 new sentences into Norwegian. And what you'll notice is that 3 of the sentences involve these new words, and in the case of a bus stops here, that's a form of the word bus that we haven't seen yet. So all we have to do now is to apply the rules to the new words. So for example, jente, which is feminine, for the girl, we change the final E to an A to give us jenta. Now on this table I've greyed out the rules that we actually don't need for this particular problem. So we just have in jente, it hotel, in hund, hunder, and hundene. Now one of the problem is that we have to have a bus, And we don't know which class bus is, or bus I should say. We don't know which class that word belongs to. So we have to figure that out. And looking at the examples that we've got of bus, which is busser and bussen, it has similar meanings to bil, and also a related meaning. Bus and car are both vehicles. So it's a reasonable guess to say that bus is the same class as bil. Also, by the way, if you try to, for example, imagine it was feminine, bus doesn't end in an E, so you can't change the final E to an A because it doesn't have a final E. So we're going to guess that bus is the same gender or class as bil, and that gives us in bus stands her hair. And you can see the other translations likewise have just used the words that we've constructed by applying the rules. Now the final task is to go the other way. We're given a couple of Norwegian nouns. We're not told which class they are, but that won't matter, as you'll see in a minute. And we're also given the word for not, and given 4 more sentences, this time to translate into English. Again, we're going to try and apply our rules, but we're going to apply them in reverse, as it were. And again, on this table, I've greyed out the rules that we're not interested in. We see the words epler and eplener, so we know that it's not an apple or the apple, because we've already seen how to form those words. So by applying the rules in reverse, we know that epler must be the bare plural, apples, and eplener must be the apples. In the case of hunden, we already know that hund is common, and we know that when you add an en to a common word, that gives you the singular, the dog. The other words, mennene, sjuene, and sjuen, are slightly trickier because we don't know which class they belong to. But all the evidence in this table suggests that when a word ends in en, it's singular definite, the shoe. And when a word ends in ene, it's definite plural, the men, the shoes. Man changes to men, so it's slightly irregular, actually a bit like the English, isn't it? Man, men. But that shouldn't worry us because we're not asked to explain that, just to recognise that the ene ending is definite plural. So that means we can do the translations. The men have apples. The woman does not have the shoes. I don't have the apples. The dog has the shoe. And that's it. We're done. So if you have any questions, please ask your tutor.